What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Speaking Sessions podcast. I'm excited to have one of my friends and clients, Reagan Haley, on. She is born and raised Texan. And we could just stop there because that's a very important fact to know about any person. But we're going to go on just a little bit more. She's also a traveler, a realtor, and a yogi. And in today's episode, we are going to go into some of the tactics that she's used that maybe are conventional, maybe not conventional when it comes to being a realtor. She has used her public speaking skills to help her out with that. But before we get into today's episode, Reagan, share a little bit more about yourself. We'd love to hear a little bit more about you.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you for having me, Philip. So I am a born and raised Texan. Very important, like you said. All my family's here in Texas, and I've done a little bit of traveling outside of the U.S. It's kind of sparked my interest right out of high school. So I've traveled to a couple of different places like Mexico, India, Guatemala, and I'm headed to the South America at the end of the summer too. And I think that traveling really just has opened up my eyes to a lot of different ways and different cultures and things like that. And so I just love traveling and getting out there as much as possible. But one of my other passions is real estate. So I come from a real estate family. My dad's a general contractor. My mom is a broker. I'm an owner of a real estate brokerage. And so I got into that pretty young, just knowing all about real estate. And then after college, I just hop right in, and I just love working with people and meeting people. And I think real estate really just opens you up to being a better person if you let it. You get to really work on yourself a lot, and I'm all about that. So I've really enjoyed the past couple of years in real estate. And then, of course, I'm a yogi. So when I did some of my travels, I traveled to India to study yoga. And then from there, I just came back home and I met a beautiful community here in Frisco, Texas, with all my yoga people. So definitely love sharing that gift too.
And that's great. And before we go dive into that background a little bit, because I do want to dive into that some, I want to ask you the first question, which is, what is your definition of public speaking?
Yeah. So public speaking to me is pretty much any position that you're put in where you are speaking to your colleagues or clients or a group of people. So it can be a presentation that you're doing, if you're doing a listing appointment, if you are just answering a question in a large crowd, or if you're the one speaking to the crowd as well.
Yeah, I agree with you there on that definition. So many people think for some reason that it's specifically just speaking on large stages, which yes, that is a form of public speaking. That's probably the most common form. But like you said, it's speaking in front of any crowd, even answering that question. So it's not even you being that center of attention or that spotlight person speaking. It's just you simply answering a question in front of a bunch of people. So I like that different perspective there. I haven't had anybody so far answer it that way. But I want to go back here to you talking about your travels a little bit and explain some of that, especially from like a communication perspective, besides the obvious language barrier there. What are some of the things that you've noticed with communications with people not from Texas? I mean, we could go that deep. People outside of Texas don't understand Texas like Texans do.
Yeah.
But even just outside of the United States, like how is that differing?
Yeah, definitely a lot of differences. So the first place that I went was Guatemala, and I had very little Spanish, but I went there to go for like a 1 week Spanish course. So I was kind of learning along the way, and you learn pretty quick when you're in another country. So, it definitely takes a lot to go out and go to another country when you're not completely fluent in language. But what kind of surprised me the most is I was traveling around and going on boats and taking motorcycles and cars and whatnot to get to different places, and there was a lot of people that not only didn't speak Spanish, but they didn't speak English either. So there was some German people and French people, and you'll be sitting next to them in a bus and you're trying to sort of be polite and communicate, and sometimes just a smile is kind of all that we have in common, and you just kind of go off the vibes and stuff. So it's definitely interesting when you don't know the language. But another thing that I learned is that people communicate differently than we do other than the language. So body language and different things like that. And sometimes tone can really throw you off. I've been to some places like in India, they have something called the head nod and they're shaking their head no, but really that means nothing. they're just doing that because that's just what they do. And, the tone, it could be a little more aggressive, but it's really just how they communicate. It doesn't have anything to do with the message. So I think for me, that's something that I brought back that maybe doesn't translate to how Americans speak, but it's definitely something that translates to, the workings of having different languages and trying to communicate that way.
Yeah, and it is crazy just the differences that are there. But like you mentioned, with a smile and a laugh is another one that are very similar things. People understand that, like, hey, you're happy because you're smiling, or something was funny because you laughed, or maybe you're making fun of somebody. It depends on the situation there. But that laugh and that smile are definitely things that we have in common. And I know last year when I went to Germany and Italy, it was interesting to see that. And you can kind of point at things to help communicate a little bit. And there was a barrier to entry depending on where you were at in those countries. As you got further from the city, the barrier of speaking that the language got more and more difficult. And of course, as well, the signs. Italy was a lot better just because it's so much more of a tourist trap, if you will, than Germany. But a lot of the signs even in Italy were in Italian, and of course in Germany they were German. And so it was just interesting, like trying to figure out how to navigate and everything like that. And thankfully, they drove on the right side of the road, just like us, so we didn't have to worry about that. And Italy is a whole nother thing. I could go down that, but we drove like not a moped, but we drove like electric scooters, and we were like on the road, and it was just crazy, just totally different environments for sure. But communication, we do have some commonalities, but you realize just how much your speech and how you communicate really impacts your life when you go to another country and they don't speak the same language. It is amazing.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. That's very true.
Yeah. And so I want to transition back over here to the real estate. So most people would be like, okay, so you started about 2 years ago, which means roughly during the COVID time. And it's been an interesting time for you. But then you had your parents there that have been in the real estate space in some shape or form. So that should have helped you out some. But I'm guessing that it wasn't just a cakewalk for you in real estate. So kind of walk us through that. And what did that look like for you to go from starting to where you're at now?
Yeah, yeah. So it's been very interesting, and I can't not thank the people that I'm standing on their shoulders because they've helped me to get where I am. I mean, I'm so appreciative, but my family has also been pretty hard on me about it too, because they want to make sure I'm doing it right and not just kind of taking what's given to me. So I did start during the COVID times. I actually started thinking about it kind of right out of high school. I knew that like I wanted to get into real estate at some point. It was on my list of things to do. I just wasn't quite ready to commit yet while I was traveling and like enjoying growing up and stuff. But I started in 2021, and I kind of thought like, man, if I can get through this COVID stuff of, at people putting $100,000 over asking price on a home. And it's just like the hardest time to buy a house because it's hard to get, pre-approved and all those things. If I can do that, then I'll be smooth sailing throughout my career, which I'm sure isn't going to be the case. I mean, there's always ups and downs in every point of your life and every time you change something up. So I started out and I had no professional experience whatsoever. I was a waitress before. So I had some good people skills. I learned a lot while I was in the service industry, but I didn't have any professional skills, any email skills, any really like any type of corporate job. So for me, I think that was the hardest part, is really getting into the role and being the professional that I am now and that I'm growing to be. So I immediately took on a lot of responsibility of finding like groups like Apex and even getting into your, speaking arrangement to just better myself, because I am younger and there are more experienced agents. There's tons of agents in my area. So I just really wanted to be the best that I could and gain a lot of skills quickly. So I just started reaching out, reading books, getting as much like overload on advice as possible so that I could come off like a professional and like someone who knew what they were talking about. Because like I said, it's a hard market out here in like the Dallas, the DFW market. There's tons of great agents. And ultimately that's what I want to be. So you have to start, you're going at it pretty hard.
Yeah. And so how do you go about differentiating yourself then?
Yeah. So for me, I think differentiating yourself is being professional, being knowledgeable, being competent, and being confident too. You think I thought everybody that was going to be a professional that I met going into real estate. And then I quickly realized that agents are not professionals, clients are not professional. I mean, we're working on serious emotions here. So you kind of have to be that person to kind of reel it in and save face for, a lot of the deals. So I think coming out and presenting myself in the best way possible, being prepared, being over prepared. For me, it's looking very classy just because I want to embody somebody that they would trust. And especially with sellers and buyers, they're like, these are the biggest transactions that they're going to do, probably. I mean, sometimes. So you want to just be as prepared as possible, looking as good as possible, bringing extra pens, just having everything smooth and polished until you can kind of build your business in a different way. So that's how, starting out, I've tried to kind of differentiate myself. Also doing buyer appointments and listing appointments. So sometimes, you just want to buy a house really quick and you just want to go see those houses. And we really slow things down and we take them to a Starbucks or to a title company. And we actually have a presentation that we do that's about an hour long, that goes into the ins and outs and helps the customer. We call it how to buy a house. We're going to sit down, we're going to teach you how to buy a house today. And that excites people. And it kind of feels like it helps people get in the loop rather than let's meet at this house and then let's sign a contract. So being
Yeah.
prepared for sure.
Yeah, that'd be scary. And a lot of people don't understand that too. When you sign a contract with the realtor, you're stuck with that realtor. You're legally bound to that realtor. And it doesn't matter if you go find somebody else, that realtor is still going to get paid. Now, some may be like, you know what? It's not worth the headache. Others may say, no, like you signed it. We're holding to it. I would say more probably on the latter versus the former. But still, like understanding that and realizing that you do have the option. But if you're going to start looking around with realtors, they're going to want that protection and everything. And that is kind of a scary thing. Like, wait a second, like I just wanted to go look at some houses. I went online and this realtor has this listing. This realtor has this listing. Why do I need to talk with you and everything? And that's what a lot of people don't understand when they first buy a house, that buyer's agent is actually there for you to help you get the best deal for you and make sure that everything is done right and go through the due diligence process. So many things there. So how do you go about explaining that? I'm really wanting to draw out like a lot of information from you, not just from a realtor perspective, but how do you go about like communicating with the client to help them understand? Because that is a tough spot to be in because you're not sure what they do and don't know. So how do you go about figuring out what they do and don't know and then educating them from there?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, oftentimes you're meeting your real estate agent off of the internet. So there's absolutely zero trust there. They probably don't care about you because they're just like, oh, your number is here for me to call. They don't even know what a buyer's agent is or a seller's agent. So my thing is meeting them, trying to gain a little bit of rapport. I always stand outside of the house. Well, usually we'll meet at a Starbucks, but if for some reason I meet somebody and they're not interested in that, they just want to go to the house, I'll go and meet them so I could, give them a piece of what I'm all about, and I'll be very prepared. And I bring the representation agreement to a house, even if it's the first time that I meet this person, and I go through the entire thing with them. And it may take about 10 to 15 minutes to like fly through it. If we sit down at a Starbucks, it could take longer, but I fly through it and I tell them like, these are all of your rights in this contract. And it is very important that you have someone that is going to read these, whether you use me or not. I always tell people that you need to make sure that you have someone that's comfortable reading this to you and that goes over this with you at your first meeting, because ultimately I am teaching these people their rights as a consumer and what I'm supposed to be doing as an agent and, as my broker, as a broker. So I start off by explaining all that to them. It's a lot, but I think it does build trust because it's like I have the confidence to stop what we're doing. And it can be nerve-wracking to meet people that you don't know, either as an agent walking up somewhere, I don't know these people, we're going to go into this house, Or, as a consumer, they're like, we don't know you. We just want to get in this house. So I think it builds trust, first of all, bringing that agreement out and letting them know what their rights are. And then I also go through a presentation, which literally outlines everything like we talked about, how to buy a house and the different pieces to that. And it's not just a presentation on how to buy a house. It also tells a little bit about our brokerage, which builds trust because we have super fun pictures and we have lots of resources that we have and different relationships we have with people in the community, like roofers and mortgage people and absolutely anything. I just tell them, listen, we'll be here for anything. You can call me at any time because ultimately I want you to feel like you are in power because it doesn't feel good when you're powerless and you're giving your money away,
Yeah, that's good. It's funny you bring up the legal jargon right away with them, which is what nobody really wants to talk about, but it is such an important thing to help them understand. And I like that you go with the no pressure approach. Like, hey, let's talk about this. Yeah, of course, you have it there for them to sign if they want to move forward with working with you exclusively, but you do leave that open for them to make that decision. And then you give them that, I guess, that caveat, if you will, like, hey, whether you work with me or not, you need to make sure that you do talk to your realtor or whoever you're going to work with about this contract and what's in that contract, because obviously every brokerage, or maybe it's not obvious, but every brokerage will have something a little bit different. They'll have basically the same thing, but I'm sure there's slight nuances for each brokerage of what they put in there. And it could be to the benefit of the brokerage. It could be to the benefit of the customer. You never know which direction that may go, but that depends on the brokerage. So it's really cool that you do make sure to bring that out. And then also showing your brokerage off and everything. I think that's such an important thing. And especially as new real estate agents or people who are just new in general to sales or communicating with people, using the leverage of your company and what your company has done in the past is such an important thing to help communicate, because it's not just about you, because maybe they don't have 100% trust in you. But if you show that you've got agents behind you, a brokerage behind you, a whole company behind you that can help your potential customer out, then they can know and rested assured. I don't know. Anyways, they can have an ease, a peace of mind, knowing that brokerage or that company is also there backing what you say you're going to do, which I think is an important thing. Have you found that's been helpful for you?
Do. Yeah. And when you start a presentation, I mean, if you're meeting someone random, then it just shows a little bit of character, because the photo that we have is one of us, being fun and jumping and excited. And it just shows that, like, yeah, we're here to do business, but we have fun and we're here to build relationships in our community. And you have to be yourself to do that. And you have to be a trusted individual to do that. And I think showing a little bit about us before we get into the business is also a good thing. And then, of course, when you have, I still do those presentations for like my family members that are buying or my friends, and it just shows like a little bit more about the office life, because I think it's hard to take off my mask with my friends and family, but it's like, hey, we got this going on and this is a great thing and we got a good thing going, and it brings another element to those relationships too.
Yeah, I like it. And so I want to pick your brain a little bit more, because you mentioned a great point. Most of us do end up going into a cold conversation, a conversation where we don't really know the person and we're trying to get to know them very quickly so we can communicate with them properly. So what are some things that you do to help you be able to connect with these potential customers in order to be able to persuade them to sign that agreement with you?
Yes. So anything and anything and anything and everything that I can find. So if it's a dog, if it's they're wearing pink pants, oh my gosh, I love pink. Or that's a really great outfit. What kind of dog do you have? Oh my gosh, German Shepherd. I have a German Shepherd. She sheds all the time. Maybe you guys need a pool to go with all those kids, or really, like, you're just trying to dig in and find something to ease, those pain points. Even a little bit of humor. My boyfriend's a little bit better at that than I am. He's a realtor as well. He's very funny. So he leans on that a little bit more, but just anything and everything to kind of get in there, get a connection, are they from Texas? Like, are they coming from out of town? Oh, I've been there. Oh, I've heard this museum there. Just anything that you can do to kind of lighten the mood and drop those shoulders for you and the client, because it is awkward meeting people sometimes. You never know who you're going to meet, how confident they are. It's a big variety when meeting just the public. So
I like that. Basically going in and asking questions, listening for the ways that they respond. Do you look at body language at all or anything like that?
I do, yeah. And I try to, one, it just depends, but mirror other people's kind of sitting back a little bit, or try to have good posture. It just totally depends on who we're working with, or, what the situation is. But
Yeah.
definitely body language.
Okay. Okay. And you mentioned like your boyfriend kind of tells more jokes, which people that joke, I feel like humor is a great way to really break the ice and get people to really like you a lot. But you are a little bit more serious, definitely than your boyfriend, because he's the jokester over there. But speak to the people that are more serious, because that is a tough thing. You want to be just very professional. You want to be polite. You want to be maybe almost to the point, very just business oriented. And so how do you go and make sure that you're not just so professional that and so serious that it's almost like a turnoff, because it's like, oh yeah, Reagan's basically just here to sell me a house. Oh, Reagan only cares about me signing this contract. And there's so many people out there that they struggle with that because they don't really know how to have that small talk and stuff like that. So could you help talk to that person right now that's thinking that?
Oh, I can talk to that person because I was that person. Because the biggest thing going into this is that I was telling myself is I don't have any professional experience. And so I have to be professional and I have to be this person that I'm not yet. And I had to just be like, no, I need to be a person and I need to connect with these people and I need to get as educated as possible. So competence, you need to get as competent as possible. I took so many classes in the beginning because I wanted to know everything so that when I did meet some of those clients that were, higher profile individuals, or, they were looking for more expensive houses, or even if they're not, even if they're just those serious people, I wanted to be able to answer their questions. So being competent, being educated, taking classes in your area, make sure you're not going outside of your scope. Confidence and competence will help you defeat that, so that when you go in there with those serious people, you don't have to put on a show that you're, what you're not. And you can just really relay the message. You can answer their questions confidently. And that's what they're looking for. Those people are looking to make sure you're not, something that you're not. So first and foremost, I'd say competence, and then confidence will follow if you really know your stuff.
Mm. That's such a good point. Making sure that you really educate yourself, and that confidence helps build that confidence in you, because you know, or hope you know, that they can't stump you on a question, and you should be able to know more than them. They may ask something kind of off the wall, and then you can figure out how to kind of navigate that, which I like to use an analogy that my mentor gave me, which is when they throw something that's a little off the wall, and this is more when it's something out of left field that has nothing to do with what's going on in this conversation, but they're kind of doing that. Usually it's to throw you off guard. So this is more of a conversation where it's a little heated or something, but you go and imagine they throw a baseball at you. You catch the baseball, you look at it, you acknowledge it a little bit, and then you set it down so you can talk about it later. Or, if you don't know the answer, they throw something at you, you catch it and you're like, hey, I understand you're asking about, I don't know, let's just randomly FHA loans. I'm not 100% sure on what that interest rate is right now on an FHA loan. So let me get back to you on that. And then you set it back down. Then you go back to whatever you're talking about, just for an example. But I think that's a very tactful way. And I use that a lot in conversations that I have. If I don't know the answer, I make sure that I address it, let them know that I'll have to get back with them on that. And then, of course, follow up and get back with them on that. But too many people, I feel, try and address a question and just halfway give an answer, which is just the worst thing that you can do, because most people can tell when you're lying, even if they're not knowledgeable of the product or service that you're selling.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it doesn't come off right because you don't
Yeah.
know what you're talking about. So
Yeah.
that was a big thing for me in the beginning too, is like, well, I didn't know so much. I didn't want to reach out to people because I didn't want them to ask me any questions.
Yeah.
But you have to put yourself out there in those positions. And I had to get comfortable with saying, you know what, I really have no clue. But my broker is amazing. She's been doing this for 20 years and I know she knows. So let me get back to you about that. Or saying, I'm not a mortgage professional, but let's talk to the lender together and we can, get that right answer for you and get the better answer rather than just something like a short answer or a spitball answer or whatever. That professional, that person that you're working with, the mortgage person, they're going to know exactly how to answer your question and then answer it beyond that.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great point. And so I want us to transition just slightly. So we mentioned about going and meeting somebody at a random house, a random person, but you've also had a challenge within the group. We talked about some accountability goals, and one of your goals was to go door knocking. And so I want you to speak on that a little bit because that is a very scary thing. I've done some door knocking before and I don't like it at all. And I love to speak. I just don't like to go knock on somebody's door and start talking to them. So tell us about that experience and kind of start from like what it felt like to start door knocking into how you've gained this confidence through that.
Yeah, yeah. Door knocking is the thing. It's a thing that not a lot of people do. So it's kind of uncharted territory a little bit. So you think of like people door knocking as like people looking for money for charities or looking for, to replace your roof or get you a new security system. And those are all kind of hard sales. They want you to sign up right then and there. So it is a little interesting being a realtor door knocking because ultimately what you're trying to do is go up to the door and make a connection with someone. And you're just, they don't necessarily even want you to be there, especially in this day and age. I mean, after COVID and just people like their privacy, their security. So I was in my head for sure about that a lot at first. And then I was like, you know what? Like, I want to improve my speaking skills with consumers. And I just want to learn how to have these conversations. And what better way than to knock on their door and just go for it. So it's definitely a learning curve. So I look at it just like cold calling. So when I first started to cold call, wasn't very good, didn't really want to do it. And then start realizing that you're spending these hours doing this cold calling and nothing's happening because your speaking skills aren't together or you don't have your script right or you don't want to be doing it. And so you're just powering through. So with the door knocking, I realized when I first started doing it is I was extremely nervous. I mean, I still get a little nervous when I go up and knock on a random person's door. And you just have to keep getting better at it. You have to practice, you have to role play the scripts and kind of where the conversation could go. And you have to have some key finite points that you're trying to hit that may interest somebody. Because when you knock on the door and you're like, hey, I'm a realtor, like I have a house for sale in this neighborhood. We want you to stop by our open house and try to make that connection. It's kind of like, okay, thanks so much. Bye. And then you're
Mhm.
like, wait, my purpose here is to meet people, to connect with them and get their information so I can either help them in the future, 1 year or 10 years down the line, or ask them, do you know any friends or family? And, knocking on someone's door, you don't know these people. And it's definitely difficult. It's very difficult. But I think the thing that's helped me the most is to just have getting out there and doing it, having the accountability and just having a good script too. And that's still a work in progress for me. And I think we've talked about that a bit too, is trying to get people to come out from behind the door and see what we're doing rather than just kind of, hey, thanks, slam the door.
Yeah, yeah, and you have such a limited amount of time there, especially being that you're at their own personal home. But what I really heard there was that you had a plan of action there. You had your script, you had some talking points, you had things that you wanted to make sure that you were able to hit on if you had the chance to be able to do that, rather than, we're just going to go up there and wing it and kind of see what happens.
Yeah.
And it's funny because we oftentimes do that in all sorts of conversations, or we hear about people doing that. Oh, I'm going to get on stage and I'll just figure it out when I get up there. Oh, it'll just come to me. Or we got to go in and have a crucial conversation with somebody, a high stakes, high emotional conversation, and think that, oh, you're just going to have perfect clarity in the moment. I've never had perfect clarity in the moment
No way.
whenever I know I've got to have this tough conversation with my spouse, with a fellow coworker, with somebody that maybe I did them wrong or maybe they did me wrong. Never have had perfect clarity and perfect recollection. So I
Yeah.
always had to go in prepared, have my talking points, which I think is such an important thing. And so glad you brought that out. And what got you to decide to do that? Was it that you just kind of went out there, spur of the moment, decided to do it, or did you kind of have that game plan to go into it from the beginning?
Yeah, well, I did want to share with you a quote real quick that I think is perfect for this scenario and speech overall. And it's, you're never going to rise to the occasion. You're going to sink down to your level of training,
Mm.
which, I mean, that's with everything. Like, you have to practice and you have to be prepared. And I just thought that was a good quote that I wanted to share with you guys. But as far as why I started door knocking, is there was a real stagnancy in my first like year in real estate, and I was cold calling and cold calling, and that's not the only way you can get business. You know, there's different pillars of your income. You can do open houses, you can do cold calling, you can reach out to your family and friends, you can do, seminar, whatever it is, pop buys, door knocking. And I picked, a couple of them. And the cold calls, like, there's only so much you can do. So I wanted some change. And I know it's a thing, and I just wanted to do it. I mean, I didn't want to do it, but I thought it would be good for me. And my boyfriend and I both like had kind of teetered with the idea for a long time. And we were like, all we need to do is print these flyers and then drive there and just get out and just start knocking on doors. And so that's what we do. And I think it's nice to have the accountability partner as well, for sure.
Man,
Definitely
that,
find somebody from the office. Yeah.
yeah, talk about a terrible date idea. But there y'all go on this wonderful date. And I
Question the
say that
text of me.
sarcastically.
Yeah.
That's pretty funny though. But hey, it's a great partner to have for that for sure, because they're definitely not going to ditch you, because you'll forever make fun of them because they're lame if they didn't go do that. So that's awesome that y'all went and did that together. But Reagan, this has been awesome. I got to say, for this being your first podcast, I don't think I would have guessed that was your first podcast. So you did a really great job. I know we kept it on real estate, which was really easy for you to talk about. You can definitely tell you have knowledge. And so I want to get into our last question here. And this one's maybe a little bit tougher for you, but we'll see. Some people it's stumped in the past, but we're going to get through it. And that is, if you only had one message to share for the rest of your life, what would that message be?
So this one's kind of easy for me, and it's, we live a life of abundance. There's plenty to go around in every aspect of our life, whatever you're struggling with, your faith, your family, your job, opportunity, whatever it is, there's plenty. There's plenty. There's no scarcity of deals or whatever you're struggling with. And you have to get rid of and like eliminate that scarcity mindset. That's the only thing that's bringing you down. It accounts for all aspects of life. And yeah, bring up the abundance, bring up those, all those activities that are, high power activities. I mean, just keep the good energy flowing, and abundance over scarcity every time. It'll get you wherever you want to go. There's plenty around, and, abundance over scarcity, 100%. You can do anything.
I like that, and couldn't agree more. Every time that I have an abundant mindset and live in abundance, things happen so much better for me, and life is so much better than when I go into that scarcity mindset. And then all of a sudden I start seeing all the negative things, the things that could go wrong. And it seems like less opportunities are there for me. And I also don't see opportunities for other people because of that scarcity mindset. And you're right, living that life of abundance is so important, especially for you as a realtor and those that are listening that are realtors or brokers. There's 100 million of y'all. I don't know how many there really are, but there are a ton of y'all in every single state, every single city over this whole country. You're not the only one. You're not going to be for everybody. So just remember that it is about abundance, because there's plenty of houses out there too. Plenty of people trying to buy and sell houses. You don't have to get every single one. I think somebody said, yeah, somebody here local to me, they always talk about like, hey, I don't need 100% of the business here for what they do. They're like 1%. If I had 1% of the business here, I would be ridiculously rich. So I'm not worried about 100%. I'm not even worried about 1%, but I'll just shoot for 1%. And that's good enough for me.
Yeah.
It is so true. Because when you think about it, especially somewhere like DFW area, oh man, like that's way bigger than where I'm at here in Greenville.
Yeah.
So yeah, well,
Yeah. We
y'all's
got
1% is probably all of us here. I really don't know the exact numbers, but yeah, y'all are tremendously bigger in population than us. So,
Yeah.
but I love that message. And Reagan, if people want to follow you, get to know more about you, if they're in the Dallas Fort Worth area and they want to do some business with you because they're looking for a realtor, where can they go to reach out to you?
Oh, yeah, I would love that. So on Facebook, you can find me Reagan Haley, and then I also have Instagram, which is Homes by Hailey DFW, and you can reach out that way. And yeah, let's get coffee or whatever and chat, and let me help you with your real estate needs. I'd love that.
Awesome. Y'all make sure to go follow Reagan. She's awesome. I've enjoyed getting to know her over, I think it's coming up on a year. So it's been awesome getting to know you and everything. You're just you're a breath of fresh air. Very very nice, and you're getting more confident in yourself as well, which I really love that you're coming out of that. And I hope that my coaching has been able to help out with some of that there. But I definitely know that you've been stepping into that yourself, and it's not just me coming out there and doing that. But Reagan, I really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing some of your knowledge with us today.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And definitely this partnership has been great for, my overall growth. And I've just really been enjoying our group and getting better every day. So I appreciate all your help. And yeah, thanks for having me on. I loved it. This is great. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. I'll talk to you later.